Welcome back to the 80s at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. It is now time for a special panel. Roger Conant has been working behind the scenes and put together an A-list team that consists of Jeff Daniel from the Maple Hill Automotive Group, Eric Barbosa from the Cavender Automotive Group, and Cheryl Thompson. You will remember Cheryl. She's been with us before. She's with the Center for Automotive Diversity, Inclusion, and Advancement. Everybody, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you for having us, Ted.
Mm-hmm. Great to have you. Roger, I know you've got some slides to kind of get things started, so I'll let you open the conversation with that.
Okay, thanks, Ted. Appreciate you doing this, and thanks for everybody there. I'm going to go through some slides. The people on the panel are going to be pretty familiar with the information, but it may be new to some people listening, and so we're going to start with this. For the last 2.5 decades, I've kind of had a mission or a purpose to try to bring more women into retail automotive and also to really do a better job with women customers. And we've been kind of trudging along. The industry is finally aware that they need to do this. But as you see in the first slide, we're not really getting it done still at the customer level. That slide on the left tells the percentages of women that are in those positions, which are primary positions. And those numbers have pretty well hadn't changed for quite a while. There's a lot of talk about diversity, inclusion, but we like to think where the rubber meets the road is in front of the customer, and that's going to happen at the dealership. And if you look at the right side, those slides there kind of shows you the top one's what people normally see. The middle one is what I call the token woman frontliner. And the third slide is where we'd like to be, half and half. So move on to the second slide there, Ted and Will, I think. Now, the industry has done a really good job of addressing this problem, which they weren't doing several years ago. And they know they have a problem with this. They're talking about it. Where the activity, the actual action steps have taken place is with forming women's groups. And you can see some of the top consolidators in the country have formed women's groups. That's a really good start, and it needs to be done. But I'm kind of hard on this fact that until we get more women in primary positions at the customer-facing level, the customer won't know that dealerships are anything but, well, man caves, to tell you the truth. So that's where we're going. Next slide. And before, we really didn't have any proof in the past about what having a better gender balance would contribute to the bottom line of the dealership. Everything was anecdotal. It was kind of like, it's a nice thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Others are doing it. Early last year, a group, this was actually done by a group in England that did it. Actually, OEM did this, and they absolutely surveyed about 40,000. They sent out 40,000 requests. They got 20,000 surveys back. And here's what the evidence showed about a more diverse front line. It showed, number one, that the public, the customers realize this. They notice that the industry is mostly male. Number two, that they'd rather see more mix insofar as a gender balance. But the third one is the real kicker. They said in pretty good numbers that if they saw more gender balance, it could make a difference in their perception of the store. And that's the first hard evidence I've ever seen after following this for 2 decades, that somebody really asked the public, is this going to make a difference in the bottom line of the dealership? And we think we've got the evidence to do that now. Next. There's also something that has come into focus in the last, I'd say 2 or 3 years, is a principle or research called the 33% principle of critical mass. When I first started this several years ago, we thought we need to really get to a 50-50 balance. And quite frankly, that's going to be real hard to do in retail automotive. But recently I found research, pretty solid research, that says that you really don't have to get to 50%. Your first benchmark, your first goal should be just 33%. Because in a group, if you reach a 33% ratio of whatever minority you're talking about, that group starts to gain critical mass. It's a tipping point. Tokenism shifts to a more recognized minority. Think of nuclear physics. You know, if you add certain things in nuclear physics to an atom bomb, that's what makes things explode. The minority takes on more of a mind of its own, recruiting, retaining, and supporting more women. But that 33% seems to be a real breaking point where you get out of tokenism and into some real movement. And if you look at the figures on the first slide we're not anywhere near 33%. Okay. So, but that's pretty solid research too. Next slide. And there's some proof that this is working. For instance, there's a international group that called the 30% Club. This was started in the UK, 2010. And what they wanted to do was to build female representation on the boards of big companies. All right. The boards back in 2010 had about a 12% average of women directors. And this group has really seen progress using that 33% principle, because they've moved from 12% to 40% in just 12 years. And you can see at the bottom of the slide how they've increased from the 2010 to 2022, where they're 40%. As long as they have a goal and intention to reach 33%, it seems to really be a tipping point. Next. And so just a reminder, this slide, I have the big 33% there. This is where we are right now in the industry. 19%, actually, it's about 20% the advisors. The fixed ops seems to have the most movement insofar as gender balance. The rest of them could really use some help. So with that, finish with the slides. And what I'd like to do is to bring in someone, and I'm real familiar with Cheryl Thompson, who's, well, I would call her a lifer with Ford, right, Cheryl? I mean, you started out in Ford manufacturing, but when I brought this 33% principle up to Cheryl, she said, I've seen this actually in action, Roger. I've seen this actually take place in my career path. So Cheryl, first of all, tell us a little bit about Cadia real quick, and then I'd like for you to share your experiences with that critical mass reaching 33% and how it takes on a mind of its own.
Yeah, absolutely, Roger. Thank you. Great introduction. I love the slides that you shared. You're right. I was a lifer at Ford Motor Company 31 years, and in manufacturing, came up through the tool and die trade and then went into engineering. And, my time has been spent across vehicle and powertrain manufacturing, engineering, and operations. And I spent a couple of years at a tier 1 supplier. So I've lived the experience of being the only woman in the room. And I didn't really want anyone else to have that experience. And that's why I started Cadia. So Cadia has been in existence since about 2017. And we're a membership and organization with about 90 members across the automakers, the OEMs, tier 1 suppliers, and some of the dealer groups. And we do education and awareness on why is diversity, equity, and inclusion important, and provide the tools for leaders to really make a difference. So I love the 33% concept. I read a book called Powering Up by Ann Doyle, and she was talking about critical mass. And, any change effort, when you see that critical mass get on board, that's when we start to really see the rubber meet the road, right? And what Ann was talking about in her book was, at the time, Ford had a 33% stake in Mazda. And that allowed Ford to keep some of that control that they wanted. So this 33% has always kind of been in my mind. So I was the only female on the leadership team. I was in powertrain manufacturing engineering at the time. And I noticed that I sometimes felt like the token. I wonder, do they really want me here? Am I just the token? I felt lucky to be there. And so I didn't speak up sometimes because I felt like, are they going to listen to me? When I did speak up, sometimes I felt like I wasn't listened to, or you've probably heard this before. I spoke up. It wasn't really heard or listened to. Somebody else says the same thing, and it's all of a sudden the best thing since sliced bread. So, that was the experience I was having. We had 2 females join the organization from other areas of Ford, and they were just a level higher than me. And I started to see some things changing. But what really, really made an impression on me is there were 2 gentlemen that used to sit at the head of the table and lead the operating committees all the time. And they weren't there. And so the 2 other women sat at the head of the table. We're in this meeting, and all of a sudden I'm watching the room, and everyone's kind of like shifting around in their seats, feeling, I could see they visibly looked uncomfortable, right? And so for me, it was like, wow, there's that 33% that Ann Doyle wrote about. I'm seeing it in action. And I started to watch dynamics, like the group think was now being broken up by, one of us would say something and the other would back the other one up, right? So it wasn't, our voice was being heard. I also saw real problems getting solved, problems that had been kind of swept under the rug before, or, people not speaking up when groupthink was going on. That was no longer happening. So I saw a huge improvement in the performance of the organization. And, when you see that 33% at that level, that's where the decisions get made. And so when you were showing your chart in my world, I always look at it looks like a pyramid, right? We've got great diversity at the entry level. In fact, we've got the best diversity on the plant floor in manufacturing. But as you start to go up that leadership pipeline, that chain, right, there's less and less diversity. And so for me, if I can see that 33% in those higher level positions, or in my world, it's where it's customer facing roles, like you said, there are roles, anything having to do with profit and loss or how the business makes money. That's where we need to see that more diversity or more women, right? Those are where the decisions get made. So for me, I saw it in action and it was very, very powerful.
Cheryl, that's as good as it gets. You telling your story there and sharing the color of watching this over years around you. So I really appreciate that. That's excellent. We have a couple of guys who, by the way, we're going to need the guys to move this needle. I will guarantee you in this industry. I've got 2 gentlemen that are already there. They passed a 33% a long time ago. I just can't wait to kind of hear their story. Not so much about the 33%, but about why, first of all, they wanted to do this, why they saw a need to do this to increase that gender balance. And then a little bit sharing about where they are today with it. And also, how does it contribute to the bottom line? Because let's face it, in retail automotive, if we don't appeal to the decision makers' bottom line in reasons for doing something, for a change in culture, that bottom line has got to be included in that presentation. They've got to see that this can influence the bottom line because it's a bottom line industry. So let me first of all call in Jeff Daniel. Jeff was really the first recognized person that I gave what I was trying to develop called Women in the Service Lane Award. And all you had to do to qualify for that was to have 30%. Okay. And Jeff far exceeded that. So Jeff, let me let you explain a little bit about your journey. Okay.
Well, I grew up and appreciate being here supporting my adventure in this industry, which started with having a lot of stepsisters. So I was the minority growing up where I was outnumbered 6-1. And I realized, they knew how to do stuff. There were some pretty smart cookies that were my stepsisters. And as I got into this industry, male dominated, 20 plus years ago, I brought one of the first female salespeople on board in the industry I was in. 6 months later, she's in the top 3 in the state of Michigan. Why? Because she listened. And my customers didn't really care as long as A, they were presented a product, B, they were listened to, they were asked for the sale, they signed on the bottom line, and they left. So light bulbs go off. Well, you talk about the bottom line. She wasn't giving the store away. She wasn't getting beat up. My uncle down the road is going to get me a better deal. They just nodded their head and agreed and signed on the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So you start looking at that. I started here 7 years ago, male-dominated service drive. However, my customer base is 65 to 75% female every day. What are they looking for? They're looking for compassion. They're not looking for diagnosis on the drive, which the advisors that were here were outstanding at that. They were ex-technicians. They were talking over everybody's head and, oh, it needs this axle. But they don't care. They really don't. They want compassion. They want understanding. They want empathy. They want to know how much it's going to cost and when they can get their car back. If you can juggle those 5 items, you're going to be successful. And the males, our pride is always, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with the car, and then my technician's going to tell you what's wrong with the car, but he's going to get paid, and I've already diagnosed it for you. So you change that principle and let everybody do their job, and you focus on the tools. The advisors need our engagement. They need electronic devices. They need video. They need training. They need to go away to school the same way we were sent to school. You don't just sit them in a chair and say, good luck, because they'll die. They're very successful if you realize they need the same thing that male needed that went from being a technician to advisor, except they don't need to know anything about cars. They just need to know about people. It's a
Jeff,
people business.
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What obstacles, and thank you for that great story. What obstacles did you run into in integrating this desire of yours to change the composition of your team?
You've got to be open with what you're looking for to hire. Some of the first people I found were in the restaurant industry. The people that were served, your meal came out cold and they did an outstanding job of taking care of that for you. It wasn't that person's fault, but if they realized you weren't drinking your drink or you weren't eating your food and they snapped up on it, said, what's wrong? What can I do to fix this? That's the person you hand your business card to. If you're looking to do something else, we do the same thing all day long. And just instead of dealing with a steak and potatoes, we're dealing with an engine and a transmission. If you can do this, you can do this. The obstacles where they don't know anything about cars. Number one thing, they want to be talked to. They want to be intelligent. They get overwhelmed when a customer requires more information than they have at their fingertip. That's the downside. If too many people just beat them up because you don't know you're a woman, that's my job, is to tell them, okay, this is how we're going to teach you the next thing. So you teach them enough to carry on the conversation. Their job is not to diagnose, and the customers have changed wholeheartedly in their presentation. I get more, God, I was greeted with a smile. I got greeted at my car. I don't get he tried to tell me I needed an XYZ 101 under the hood, and I just had that replaced. So you throw the old book out, you write a new book.
Let me do this, and thank you, Jeff, for that. One of the things and I've done a lot of research on this, one of the things that you hear is, I can't find the women. I just can't find them. They're just not out there. They're not applying in this type thing. And some of the other more, what you call maybe disguised negatives, is I believe there's a perception in our industry that women might, have to be with family more. They're not as nose to the grindstone, working extra hours. They may have to leave for some kind of a family situation. I'd like Eric to speak to that, because Eric, he's more enthusiastic than I am, and that's really hard to do, folks. But Eric has a theory about what you really have to do in order to accommodate a better gender balance from a manager's standpoint. Eric, would you share a bit of that with people?
As far as accommodate the schedules, the traditional thinking of bell to bell, the pay plans, to attract that talent. Is that what you're referring to, Roger?
Yeah, because we know there's an underlying, I hate to say, not prejudice, but there's a perception that women are going to be more difficult as employees than men.
If that perception's out there, and I understand it's not my reality. It's never been my reality. I'll tell you, raised by a single mom, I just saw a hardworking human being, and was raised that way, and I got blessed for that, and I've taken that approach when I hit the working environment and turning 18, and then I got into the auto industry. And it's never crossed my mind that way. So I think that's just for me, because that was my story. But now that I am in a leadership role, I know that does exist for some people, and understanding that maybe I didn't know what my mom went through, working late and doing what she did. And now I get to understand that. And I wanted to break those barriers so that other young women, married or not, single moms or not, have the same opportunities. And one of the things was pay. Why do they not come into our industry? The commission is scary. They're balancing a lot of things, and not knowing where that paycheck's going to come. Right. Could be scary. It could be scary for males as well. But I felt like that was a big point when I was interviewing more women or females. The other thing was the schedule. Let's be realistic. The majority of the household, if you have kids, they're dropping the kids off at school and have to be there at a certain time. So making it at 8 a.m. maybe wasn't a possibility. So shift 30 minutes, make it 8:30 or make it 9, a different schedule. And what it did for us, or for me, was it opened a whole new pool of talent out there that maybe didn't consider our industry because they heard bell to bell, they heard commission, they heard non-salary. Then, when you gave them that opportunity, even weekends off, like that's a big deal. But if you get people that are efficient and organized in these metrics, you'll find out they'll start performing. They'll be way more efficient. And then they choose to be there and change their schedules because they like what they're doing. That's been my reality with that.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Ted in here. I'm sure he's got a few questions, and I'll turn it over to you, Ted.
Eric, I want to do a follow-up with you on the points you just made. Roger posed the question, what inspired you to deliberately recruit more women? Was your mom part of that inspiration, I would imagine, at an early age?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, again, it wasn't women or man. It was Matilde. Mm-hmm. She was doing what she was doing. And the other thing is, what really triggered the I'm going to go after 50% balance, which we made up to 47%, was going to an automotive conference and really feeling the minority as a male around this group. And I was like, wow, this feels different. And I'll be honest, I didn't like the feeling, and it was uncomfortable. And then I said, wow, so that's how I feel. Then those two things inspired me wanting to remove that, and then realizing what it does to the bottom line, because the performance is it's great.
I want to talk about that, the bottom line, if I can, for just a moment. By the way, you're not afraid to try and do things. I know we met several months back with Jeff, and we talked about a different type of work week environment, and you've had some experience with that. And I know you've got to see both sides of that coin, but again, kudos to you, Eric, because you're not afraid to try something out of the box.
Yes, sir.
The research that you did, and you and I are having a separate segment here on the Roundtable about that, but you did some research on women and men and pay differences. What did you find? Would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Yeah, just again, we were 47% represented, pretty close to 50-50 balance between 107 employees. And what we realized is when it was balanced, not only was there not a gap, it went to the other side. And what I mean by that, the females were outperforming the males.
Look out.
So when you see that, and again, guys, I want to make this point. I am not about just the male female part. I'm about the right person in the right seat. And when you put that person, no matter what the gender is, and I think we alienate that specific female portion because they don't have those opportunities. They not only, I say this a lot, they not only deserve a seat at the table, they deserve a seat at the head of the table because they're competitive. The numbers are there. Pay plans didn't change, same positions, but for some reason, this one's performing at a different level. And we have the data that backs that.
All right. What I want to do now, just a quick lightning round, starting with Cheryl, then over to Jeff, and then over to Eric to bring it home. Here we are in the middle of May 2023. We're halfway through the second quarter. You have a lot of peers watching, everybody, fellow dealers, general managers, service directors, fixed ops directors, influential people throughout the industry. What piece of advice should we be aware of looking out over the horizon into the rest of 2023 as leaders in the industry, something or some things that you would recommend? And if you do that in about a minute or less, again, Jeff first, if I may, and then Cheryl, and then over to Eric.
There is not a book written that teaches you how to manage that is proficient and written in the last 6 months. If they're 30-year-old books, throw them out. If they're 10-year-old books, throw them out. It's an ever-changing industry. It's a phenomenal industry to be in. The opportunities are over the top for everybody, but you have to open your eyes and ears and realize times have changed. You better change with them. My staff right now is 80% female, including managers. I've got 10% of my technicians are female. We're very gender balanced throughout the store because that's what my customers demand, and our ROI is second to none, in my opinion. So they're out there. Find a way to look, reach out to people that are on panels like this, and find out what are they doing different.
And Jeff, you're with the Maple Hill Automotive Group in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Correct. Cheryl, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I love so much of what Eric and Jeff shared. I would just say, what Jeff said about finding women, a server in a restaurant, right? Be creative. And once you get a few women in there, then they're bait to attract other women. And then I wanted to underscore what Eric said as well, looking at what do women need and not being afraid to make those changes to meet their needs. And when you make things better for women, it's better for everyone. There's something called the curb cut effect. So think about the cut that's in the curb so wheelchairs can get up over the curb. That doesn't only help people in wheelchairs, it helps anyone riding a bicycle, somebody pushing a stroller, someone pushing a cart. So it's the same thing here. If we can make our systems and our processes better for women, it's going to make things better for everyone. Again, then pointing to the bottom line.
And Cheryl, I think what these gentlemen also pointed out is that it's recognizable to the customer as well when
Absolutely.
we have a diverse employee base. Okay, and it's recognizable when we don't have one as well. So
absolutely,
I think it's very appropriate. Eric, if you would bring it home.
I agree with both of them. Jeff said something about knowing your audience. They're the decision makers, or they influence that decision. And then Cheryl, as far as don't build a box, break the box, try things different. I mean, if it doesn't work, you'll learn from it, and if it does work, you're a hero. So don't stick to the status quo, and get aggressive. Make it part of your strategy to open things up.
Great advice. We'll leave it there. Roger, I want to thank you so much for putting the panel together. We're greatly appreciative to you and all the contributions you make to the industry on behalf of the fixed ops community. So Roger, thank you. I want to thank Jeff Daniel, Cheryl Thompson, and Eric Barbosa for being with us here today. So the A-list panel here today, back at the 80s at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.